I'm aware that many will criticize me now, hurling insults in my direction. However, I'm not taking this action for my own benefit, but rather for the sake of my son. I implore you to hear my tale. My spouse and I first encountered each other 7 years prior, courted for half a year, and then tied the knot, even exchanging vows in a religious ceremony. Our child came into the world 4.5 years ago. Following the arrival of our son, we epitomized the perfect household. Throughout this period, she proved to be a devoted wife and a phenomenal mother. My wife initially grew distant, then irritable and overly demanding, dissatisfied with everything. My earnings were insufficient, I neglected her and our child. Yet if one reflects on it, I solely existed for my loved ones. Her disposition deteriorated with each passing day. Nevertheless, I couldn't even fathom the possibility of her being involved with someone else. Though I was informed that she had been spotted with another man at a restaurant, I paid no heed to it, simply refusing to believe it. That day will forever be etched in my memory. My son and I came back from our country house, only to discover her absence, along with her belongings and documents. The funds we had set aside for the renovation of our residence had also vanished. She departed, leaving behind a note in which she confessed to having always loved another man and only married me to forget him. Now, after numerous years, he had located her, and she yearned to be with him. She expressed gratitude for the years we shared, requesting my forgiveness, urging me not to pursue her, and to move on as quickly as possible. She also entreated me to care for our son, assuring that as soon as circumstances permitted, she would undoubtedly take him with her. As for how to explain her absence to him, she asked me to fabricate something, hoping that one day he might comprehend and pardon her, just as I would. At that instant, my world was utterly upended. I felt like a discarded puppy on the streets. Yet my heart ached most for my son. He had a deep attachment to his mother, adored her immensely, and her abandonment could potentially shatter his psyche. I was compelled to deceive, to claim that his mother had ventured to Africa to aid ailing children and would surely return to him once she had healed them all. And why doesn't she call or write? Because in Africa there are jungles devoid of phones or mail, but as soon as it becomes feasible, she will write. It was immensely challenging to balance work and child-rearing. Whenever feasible, my cousin would fetch him from the nursery to watch over him, but it was evident that my son sorely lacked a mother's warmth and attention. Each day, he inquired about his mother's whereabouts, how she was faring there, and created drawings for her. Naturally, due to work, I couldn't devote adequate time to my son, leaving him largely to his own devices. I simply couldn't bring myself to send him away to a boarding school. I also couldn't introduce another woman into our home and embark on a personal life. Firstly, there was no time. Work, home, son. Secondly, single fathers aren't particularly sought after in the so-called marriage market. Thirdly, I wouldn't be able to justify to my son why, while his mother was tending to sick African children, I had found another woman. And in my son's eyes, I would appear as a betrayer, not her. I also had to purchase 2 presents for the holidays, from myself and ostensibly from my mother. I requested a friend to pen cards and letters on her behalf, expressing her love, how much she missed him, and that they would reunite soon. A 1.5 years elapsed without any word from my wife. I persisted in deceiving my son, although I myself was uncertain if she was even alive. I saved some money and purchased a trip for my son and me, a tour of the Golden Ring. He thoroughly enjoyed this excursion, and it even began to seem to me that my son was gradually but surely recovering. Then, in one of the cities, we stepped into a magnificent church, and as we exited into the courtyard, my son froze as if paralyzed, staring somewhere. I started to hurry him, and he cried out at the top of his lungs, "Mom!" Among the novices of this temple, working on landscaping the grounds, I recognized familiar features. Yes, it was my wife. For a moment, she stood and gazed at us. Then she wept, covered her face with her hands, and vanished. I informed my son that he was mistaken, took him to the hotel, promised to investigate everything and tell him, and I returned to the church alone. First, I spoke with the priest. He mentioned that 4 months prior, a young vagrant had come to them, looking wretched, nearly in tatters. She provided her name, confessed to having mortal sins, and was even prepared to take the veil. I requested a meeting with her, explained everything, though without delving into specifics. I had to wait a considerable time. Eventually, she emerged and sat beside me. She bore no resemblance to the wife I had known before her departure. All her arrogance, audacity, and willfulness had vanished. Beside me sat a mere shell, devoid of any joy in life, with a trampled and tormented soul. But she was broken and crushed. Initially, we simply sat in silence, and then she began to say that there was no forgiveness for her actions, that she was unworthy of being a mother and had no right to live at all. And it wasn't merely that she had abandoned us with her son. Although, according to her, not a single day passed without her thinking of us. There was something else, something worse. I thought that nothing could be worse than how she had treated us. It turns out I was mistaken. It could. Before me, she had dated a guy with whom she was head over heels in love. He was a well-known member of a youth gang of hooligans. But it's worth noting that he knew how to take care of her beautifully. They were even planning a wedding. And then, he was put in jail for robbery and murder. He himself asked her not to wait, said that after serving his sentence he would have no plans for her. But he told her this on purpose, so as not to ruin her life. He did not want her to wait. And then she met me. She didn't care anymore. And then he was released early and found her himself. He said that he could not forget. Feelings flared up again. She did not want to deceive anyone, to live on two fronts. That's why she left. Even though it was hard for her to part with her son. He convinced her that her son would be a burden to them until they got back on their feet. Let him live with his father for now. It was only later that it turned out that he did not want to raise other people's children, but only wanted his own common ones. Now the most important thing. When she left for him, she was pregnant from me, according to all the terms. He immediately demanded an abortion since the term was already late. The abortion was complicated, especially since it was done in a cheap clinic, almost criminal. They brought in an infection, and she can no longer have children. She had an abortion while still married to me. We are still not officially divorced, and while being wed in church. And 6 months later, he dumped her. Found the one who could give birth to his child. She simply could not return to the family after everything she had done. She had no right. She tried to commit suicide, but they saved her. Then 3 months in a mental hospital. Walked with a pillow, said it was her baby. Then wanderings, slept and ate whatever she could find. And so, as a result, she ended up near this temple, where they nursed her back to health, gave her shelter. She confessed. Now her place is here. She said that she would pray for forgiveness from the Lord for everything she had done until the end of her days, and would pray for us with her son. To which I replied that she deprived one of my children of life, deprived the other of maternal love and affection, made me lie to my son for my whole life. But I'm not going to lie to him all my life. I said that she decided for us, for everyone. And now, if my son had not seen her, I would not even have approached her. But he remembered that mom, the real good mom who treated sick children in Africa. And I will not allow my son to be betrayed a second time. Therefore, she is now immediately collecting her things, changing into secular clothes, and we are going to the hotel where our son is waiting for us. From there we will go home. She must beg for forgiveness not from God, but from her son, and not with prayers, but with good deeds. She began to protest, said that she could not, to which I replied that in that case, I would bring my son here, and then she would tell him about it herself. But if he learns the truth, it will break the boy. Just kill him morally. He will withdraw into himself and will be angry. To say that I was mistaken and it was not her, I also can't. He saw her, and I'm tired of living in lies. He only dreams that his mother will return. If there are at least drops of humanity left in her, she will go with me right now, immediately. I will settle everything with the priest myself. She obediently changed her clothes, collected her things, said goodbye to everyone in the church, talked for a long time with the priest, and already 3 hours later we were in the hotel where our son was waiting for us. I will not describe their meeting, rivers of tears, emotions, and all that. We returned home. It is obvious that she has repented, and my son does not leave her, as she does not leave him. In character, she is the complete opposite of my wife, whom I knew before her departure, soft, obedient, and her religiosity has become regular. She regularly attends church, constantly prays, quotes the Bible. Now, as for our relationship with her, she's trying in every possible way to beg for my forgiveness.
She is trying to collect bit by bit what she herself destroyed. Of course, I don't meet her halfway in this regard, but I don't particularly resist either. Maybe some time will pass and I can forgive her. But to date, I have made it clear to her that she returned only for the sake of her son. That's my whole story, and now you can judge me.